Hello everyone, my name is Mason Toms and I am an architectural historian and preservation designer at the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program, a division of the Department of Arkansas Heritage. Thank you for coming and welcome to St. Luke's United Methodist Church.
Constructed between 1955 and 1968, St. Luke's United Methodist Church was one of the first churches constructed in the Broadmoor area and is the oldest continuously operating church in the area.
The area of the city now called Midtown was originally outside the city limits of Little Rock. It was not until 1943 that this area was even near the city, but even then, the city ended at Harrison Street, which is about 11 blocks away from here. By the mid-1940s, the city limits had moved 4 blocks closer, but still ended at Fillmore Street. It would not be until the mid-1950s that this area would be included within the boundaries of the city. Back in those days, University Avenue was called Hayes Street and was a gravel road. Much of this was the private hunting grounds of the very influential Broadmoor family. Surrounding that were scattered farms and simple houses. Things began to change in the area when Little Rock Junior College, now UA Little Rock, moved to their present location in 1949, onto a plot of land donated by the Broadmoor family to the Little Rock School District for the express purposes of creating a college. In 1957, Little Rock Junior College became Little Rock University, so the city decided to rename Hayes Street to University Street in 1959. Shortly thereafter, the city embarked on a massive public improvement project on University Street. The road was widened to 4 lanes with a median, and they added mercury lights from Markham to Colonel Glen. When the project was completed in 1971, the street was renamed University Avenue.
Also at this time, the University Avenue was given the nickname the Great White Way. It was because of the overly illuminated streetway. It was actually a very common nickname across the country whenever they would add the new mercury lights, which were incredibly bright during the period. Just to set Broadmoor in context, 1954 was also the year of Brown versus the Board of Education ruling by the Supreme Court, which would lead to the dramatic events at Central High School in 1957. It was also the year that Marilyn Monroe married Joe DiMaggio, and the songs Rock Around the Clock, Shake, Rattle, and Roll by Billy Haley and the Comets hit the charts. Elvis just started recording his first songs at Sun Studios in Memphis. The movie Seven Brides for Seven Brothers and White Christmas premiered. And I Love Lucie, the Jackie Gleason Show, and Dragnet were the most popular shows on television, which you could watch while you enjoyed your newly introduced TV dinner. In late 1953, Hayes Street, which was a gravel road, traveled through mainly a heavily wooded area west and south of the city limits of Little Rock. The recent creation of Little Rock Junior College had put the area in the sights of local builders as being ripe for residential and commercial development. Since the new college occupied only the eastern half of the former Redstone hunting estate, the western half remained untouched. That was until it caught the eye of Little Rock businessman and developer Elbert Fawcett. Some Arkansas developers got their names in the paper on a regular basis, but none more than Elbert Lyon Fawcett. He started out as a Ford dealer and was a car collector, racer, legislator, publisher, printer, and used car salesman before becoming a nationally renowned builder. Fawcett was the first realtor to utilize extensive advertising in the form of print, radio, bus benches, and billboards. Among the state's most prolific developers, by 1954, he had built 12 subdivisions and had branched into Faulkner and Saline counties. Fawcett's most ambitious residential development was Broadmoor in Little Rock. The Fawcett Realty purchased the property on the west side of Hayes Street that would become the Broadmoor development in 1953 from Raymond Retzman. The purchased acreage included a lake, trees, and the Retzman Hunting Lodge, which would become the Broadmoor Clubhouse. Construction on the first houses started on June 6, 1953, along Lakeshore Drive. Prices for the new homes ranged from $11,500 to $21,600, and square footage ranged from 1,100 square feet to 1,400. According to neighborhood historians, the first 4 families to move into the neighborhood were the Bates family at 29 Lakeshore, the Spillman family at 34 Lakeshore, the Spites family at 36 Lakeshore, and the Tate family at 38 Lakeshore. These families had moved into their homes by the end of 1953, and however, many of the streets in the area were still gravel. By September 1954, 1 year after its opening advertisements, there were 100 families living in Broadmoor. These families included the Fawcett's as well, who lived in a sprawling 4,000 square foot house constructed on 3 lots on Lakeshore Drive. Broadmoor was publicized as the largest subdivision in the state from 1953 to 1955. Fawcett's Addition was also advertised as the only one with year-round air-conditioned homes, a national first. This made it, what made it unique and all the more relevant to mid-century homebuyers was that Fawcett offered 18 different plans, later expanded to 24 to accommodate the trade, and all were built in the new ranch style. Broadmoor was built utilizing on-site prefabrication methods and shops set up in the addition.
Specialized workmen operated a metal shop and a cabinet shop where all woodwork was completed, then applied in complete sections. A mill on Broadmoor Drive allowed workmen to pre-cut sections of wood and timber, then take them to the lots for construction. Broadmoor also had its own roofing and decking yard. Using this prefabrication system, crews were able to complete one house within a week or two, saving Fawcett money. It also was noted in early newspaper accounts that houses were sited on the lots to allow for as many trees to be retained as possible during the construction of the neighborhood. There were also several model homes built, including one at 2800 South University Avenue that was known as the X-Ray House, due to its cutaway walls that allowed potential buyers views of the insulation, heating, and cooling systems as well as general workings of the house, so that they could see the high quality of construction and materials used by Fawcett.
When the area was originally planned, spaces were set aside for parks, churches, schools, and a shopping center. Justin Matthews made similar allotments when he laid out Lakewood. However, it was the inclusion of Fawcett's development of the adjacent shopping center that made Broadmoor stand out, because Fawcett built the shopping center himself. It was therefore necessary for Fawcett to provide all of the conveniences that home buyers could find closer to the heart of the city, since this development was on the edge of the city at the time. And there was another amenity that Mr. Fawcett built in Broadmoor that was nationally unique, and other than year-round air conditioning. That was the Broadmoor Kindergarten Building, which you actually drove by on your way here on 32nd Street. The Broadmoor Kindergarten Building, located a block east of here, was the first child care facility built by a developer as part of a new residential development in the entire country.
Completed in 1955 and designed by Little Rock architect Richard Grow and W.F. Hibbard, the structure was one of a kind. A fireproof building that featured radiant heating floors, a year-round air conditioning system, and an attached teacher's residence. However, when a new elementary was constructed in 1959, the kindergarten building was no longer needed. The property was sold that same year to University Baptist Church, which would later become Lakeshore Baptist Church. The church still owns the building today, but leases it to another congregation for Sunday use. By 1955, over 350 homes in Broadmoor were finished. Although initially projecting 700 homes in total, the final tally was only 553 homes, when the last one was completed in 1957. That same year, Broadmoor was annexed into the city of Little Rock. When Fawcett was through with it, Broadmoor covered 190 acres and had 7 miles of paved road. In 1959, the Broadmoor Shopping Center along University Avenue was opened and included a Piggly Wiggly, Ben Franklin, Toyland, Walgreens drugstore, and a few other smaller shops such as a barber shop and clothing dealer. In later years, the commercial developments along University Avenue would be blamed in part for the decline of the downtown commercial areas.
The congregation of St. Luke's, or a congregation known as St. Luke's today, was actually originally organized in 1831 when a group began to meet in a government building on 2nd Street in downtown. In 1845, the Methodist Episcopal Church nationally split over the issue of slavery and became known as Methodist Episcopal Church North or South. This congregation sided with the South, which somewhat understandable given they are in Arkansas. But after the Civil War, the congregation moved out of their 2nd Street location into the Girls' School Hall on Main Street and became known as the Main Street Methodist Episcopal Church South. In the early 1870s, they constructed a new building for themselves between 3rd and 4th Streets on Main. However, the congregation could not handle the cost of the structure and had to sell the property. In 1901, they built a second building for themselves at the corner of 14th and Scott Street in Little Rock. Though no longer on Main Street, the congregation kept the name Main Street Methodist Episcopal Church South. In 1939, the Methodist Episcopal Church North and South reunited into a single fellowship. That same year, Main Street Methodist Episcopal Church South changed their name to Scott Street Methodist Church. The congregation remained at that location under that name until 1954, when the Little Rock Methodist Conference decided they needed a new church built on the western edge of the city. Under the leadership of Reverend David Hankins, the members of Scott Street Methodist Church volunteered to move their entire congregation into the newly built Broadmoor edition of the city. The congregation sold their building on Scott Street in 1955 and met in the Army Reserve Building on the campus of Little Rock Junior College, now the University of Arkansas Little Rock, while they constructed a church on West 32nd Street on the southern edge of the Broadmoor development. As an interesting side note, the Army Reserve Building, now home to the UALR's facilities management, was the birthplace of almost every single church in Broadmoor. We found that when we were researching it. Almost every congregation that was here spent at least a couple years in the Army Reserve Building while they were constructing their building here. In addition to the congregation of St. Luke's starting there, Good Shepherd Episcopal Church started there, Lakeshore Baptist Church, and St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church. The new church for St. Luke's was officially dedicated on March 4th in 1956 under the new name of St. Luke's Methodist Church, and was one of the first churches in the area. The church building was officially dedicated by Little Rock Methodist Superintendent Dr. Francis A. Budden at 2 services on that Sunday. The building was designed by Little Rock architect Morris Smith and contained a multi-purpose space which acted as sanctuary, fellowship hall, and 4 classrooms. In 1961, the congregation added an additional 6 classrooms to the south end of the building, which were designed by congregation member David Rippey. However, the ever-growing population of the congregation soon created a need for a new, larger sanctuary space. They wanted a space that fit the wooded area of the church grounds, but also projected the modern sensibilities of the congregation. Under the leadership of Reverend Fred L. Arnold, not to be confused with the architect who was practicing at the same time, Fred Arnold, and the Reverend Anthony Webster, they hired the Little Rock firm of Cowling and Roark to design a new worship space for them in 1964. Bishop Paul V. Galloway officially dedicated the addition, which included a sanctuary, covered walkway, and bell tower, on May 16, 1965. In 1968, the Methodist Church merged with the Evangelical United Brethren to form United Methodist Church. That same year, St. Luke's changed its name to St. Luke's United Methodist Church, and in an unrelated event, closed the porch to create a small prayer chapel, which was designed by Fred Perkins. The space we are in today is part of the 1964 addition to the church by the Little Rock firm of Cowling and Roark. The firm was founded in 1962 when architectural engineer Price Roark left the notable Little Rock firm of Earnhardt, Eichenbaum, Rao, and Blass to join Dan Cowling and create a new firm. Cowling, too, had recently left another partnership, one with Morris Smith, which lasted from 1957 to 1961. It was Cowling's former partnership with Morris Smith that allowed Cowling and Roark to receive the commission to design the addition to St. Luke's. The new partnership between Cowling and Roark was somewhat short-lived, however, and only existed from 1962 to 1966. However, in that short time, they managed to create some wonderful buildings, such as the one we're in today. Houston Price Roark was a Little Rock native. After serving in the European theater during World War II, he returned to the University of Arkansas, where he was part of the first class of the newly created architecture program, alongside Fay Jones, Bob Laser, and Ernie Jacks. However, he transferred his last year to Washington University in St. Louis, where he earned his Bachelor's of Science in Architectural Engineering. After graduation, he moved back to Little Rock and went to work for the architectural firm of Earnhardt Eichenbaum, which later became Earnhardt Eichenbaum, Rao, and Blass, where he stayed until 1961. Daniel Campbell Cowling Jr. was a native of Rogers, Arkansas. He originally started college at the Arkansas Polytechnic College in Russellville, now Arkansas Tech, but transferred to the University of Arkansas after only 2 years to study architecture in the newly created program.
It is likely that Cowling knew Roark when they were both at the University of Arkansas, as many of the upperclassmen would commonly assist in the lessons of lowerclassmen. Cowling graduated from the University of Arkansas in 1952, and in 1957 he joined Little Rock architect Morris Smith to open the firm of Smith & Cowling. This firm lasted until 1961, when Smith retired.
In 1966, after Cowling and Roark split ways, Roark founded his own firm at 713 West 2nd Street, after taking the building over from notable architectural firm Trapp, Clifford & Phelps. And that is where you'll still find the firm today, though it is now called Roark Perkins Perry Yelvington, or more commonly RPPY. Though the church was the commission of Cowling and Roark, Fred Perkins was the project architect. Perkins was born on July 8, 1938 in Carlisle, Arkansas. Like his later employer, Dan Cowling, he originally attended Arkansas Polytechnic College in Russellville for 2 years, but transferred in 1958 to the University of Arkansas to study architecture under the esteemed Arkansas architect E.F.A. Jones. Jones focused heavily on the works of Frank Lloyd Wright and Wright's organic architecture, which Jones saw as being the superior approach to design. This early influence from Jones likely explains the existence of so many writing details and elements in the buildings Perkins produced. Over summer breaks during college, Perkins would come back to Little Rock and work for Morris Smith and later Dan Cowling. It was because of this relationship that he formed during that time that he went to work for Cowling and Roark once he graduated in 1962. During his time with Cowling and Roark, Perkins found a bit of a niche in church design, having designed at least 3 churches in Central Arkansas by 1966. However, the sanctuary of St. Luke's United Methodist was his first ecclesiastical design. When Cowling and Roark parted ways, Perkins decided to stay with Roark, and when he opened his new firm, Perkins would eventually become Roark's first named partner in the new firm. The firm would continue to grow over the years, and new partners were added. However, Perkins still goes into the office and plays a somewhat active role in the firm. Over the years, Perkins designed several other churches around Arkansas. According to Perkins, he must have designed somewhere around 200 across the state. Some of the other designs you might be familiar with are Faith United Methodist Church on Markham in Little Rock, Jacksonville First Presbyterian Church, Henderson United Methodist Church, part of the eastern section of the Central Church of Christ in downtown Little Rock, Hunter United Methodist Church, and St. James United Methodist Church at 321 Pleasant Valley. Now, for the architecture of St. Luke's, it is an example, as I mentioned earlier, of Wrightian modernism or organic modernism, which was a sub-style of mid-century modern architecture. As the name suggests, it takes most of its influences from the works and ideology of Frank Lloyd Wright. This influence is seen in the material choices of stained wood and matching brown brick, as well as the triangular brackets along the eave line on the outside, which are commonly referred to as Wrightian wedges. Despite this being Perkins' first church design, he managed to seamlessly blend the elements and grandeur of traditional Gothic-inspired church design with the materials and stylings of Wright's organic architecture. The organization, height, and light of the sanctuary seems to echo the architecture of Gothic cathedrals of Europe. However, these elements are softened by the material choices of the building, such as all of the wood in the sanctuary space, the rusticated stone retaining walls on the outside, and the warm colors in the stained glass windows. Additionally, the 3 large stained glass windows on the north wall echo design elements seen in more classically designed churches. At the same time, they are a simplified version of a type of abstract design Wright used in his iconic Roby House in Chicago, Illinois. The shape of the windows also served as the basis for much of the other architectural elements in the space, such as the reredos, which is the screen as you walk in, the narthex screens, which is behind me, the kneeling wall here, the lectern, and the pulpit, all of which were designed by Perkins. This pattern was carried outside into the design of the arcade leading up from the parking area to the church entrance, and also in the design of the tower, which was added at the same time as the sanctuary. The overall form of the sanctuary is a nod to the idea that Christians are a fisher of men. The series of glue lamp arches, which kind of ripple down space, mimic the ribs of an upside-down ship's hull. In fact, the term nave, which is what you would call this area of a church, derives from the Latin term navis, which means ship. The embedded imagery of the church being a ship became a more common theme in mid-century modern church design. In 1968, Perkins designed a final writing touch to St. Luke's United Methodist in the form of a small prayer chapel. This tiny space featured a few of Perkins' later signature elements, such as his inverted Y-shaped stained glass windows and decorative wood pendants, which was a nod to traditional Gothic architectural features. Feel free to explore the church. This level of the church, please do not go downstairs. There is a daycare down there that has special security precautions. If you exit out these doors at the front, we'll have some people kind of directing you to the other areas. A few things I would like to point out before you go out that way though. Right when you exit these doors, there's some pictures on the wall, and those are photos of the old church buildings that they had built before they moved here. And then when you get around over by the original section of the church, there's a history of the church on a bulletin board, quite wide. But it's actually a very detailed history of the church. But we will have some people kind of pointing on where things are. Be sure to see the small foyer underneath the tower, which is right through these doors with its triangular stained glass windows, as well as the prayer chapel. And across the hall from the prayer chapel is the original sanctuary space for the first building that was built here in 1955. I hope you enjoyed today's tour. Thank you for coming and have a great weekend.